Hello everyone, this is POW Weather coming at you with another update. In this update, we're going to be talking about a major winter storm with heavy snow and severe weather as an active pattern looks to take shape by the middle of March, and a much colder pattern as well. So before I do get started, if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. And I do ask you to share this video with your friends and family on social media. All right, so let's get started. We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot of important stuff to talk about. So let me kind of describe to you, I think that's how March is actually going to play out. Here's a graph that I think this is actually shows a true depiction on the setup for March. We're going to start seeing a much more active Pacific jet stream that's going to be hitting the coastline of the west coast of Washington and Oregon. And eventually, as we get towards the middle of the month, that's going to bring some much needed rain for portions of the South and deeper into California. Also, at the same time, that stratospheric warming event that we had that started on January 7th that brought us the well below average anomaly temperatures in February, a piece of that is still left. So I do feel a displacement from the polar vortex is going to come down from the north from Canada into the United States, and that polar jet will start creeping colder air entering the picture into the U.S., especially as we get into the middle of March and beyond. At the same time, we're going to start seeing a much more active southern subtropical jet as we see a much rainier, colder, and wetter time frame for the South and Southeast as this active subtropical jet really starts to get his act together. So let me kind of show you the reasons why. So let's take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index. Now I follow this a lot. You know, I'm in Dallas, so this pertains to a lot about me. But I've been following this for years. And here's how the setup works. You can take a look at back on February 24th, we started to see that index go negative, and before that it was positive. Basically what that implies is anytime you see a positive number, it's typically a more drier pattern. That's typically what you actually see in a La Nina. The southern jet is not really very active. You don't really have system traversing across way down to the deep south. But once it starts turning negative, that's when you start raising some eyebrows and you start looking at more of a kind of an El Nino pattern with a much more wetter conditions setting up. And you can actually see the trend is negative all the way through now March the 7th. Now, this is a lagging indicator, and typically it's about 2 weeks lag time. So you can actually see once it turned double digits, so essentially once it has a -8, that typically implies more El Nino. A +8 is La Nina, and actually 0 is more, neutral. But you can actually see it went double digits back on February 25th. So if we count 2 weeks, 14 days, that implies a much more active time frame around the 11th and 12th, 14 days out. So let me kind of walk you through this. So this is kind of interesting, and you can definitely see it actually was gone down from a 15 all the way down to a 7 on the 30-day average, SOI index. So that actually sets the stage for a much more active subtropical jet. And that actually continues, because you look at this continues to remain negative. So you still count 14 days out from that. So this looks to extend all the way through the 21st as of right now. And I think it actually extends all the way through the end of March, leading up to Easter. So let me kind of walk you through this. So also at the same time, you can definitely see, look at out in the equatorial Pacific. We've been dealing with a weak La Nina, and you can actually see it's been basically a negative deviation 1. But look at the noticeable jump. We're seeing actually heading towards a little bit more of an ENSO neutral phase. Look, back in February, we're starting to creep up. But here recently, with that dip in the Southern Oscillation Index, we can see a rise. That typically increases the water, the warmth in the water out in the equatorial Pacific. That amplifies the southern jet, and that'll traverse across. And with a 2 week lag, that'll set the stage for about the 11th and 12th time frame for a much more active, snowier, and possibly severe weather, rainier, colder pattern for the south and southeast. So let me kind of walk you through this. And also another mechanism I follow is the MJO, which is the Man-in-Julia oscillation. So right now, we're essentially in phase 8. Now look at phase 8. Phase 8 brings a lot of warmth for the central U.S. and the northern U.S., and that's what we're actually seeing right now. You have some a little bit below average anomalies for the southeast. Florida's getting some little colder weather right now, and to the northeast as well. Look at where we're going. We're going into phase 1. Look what phase 1 looks like. That brings much more colder air for the south and the southeast and the Ohio Valley. But then now that we traverse across into phase 2 and phase 3 as we go into the middle of March. Look what phase 2 and phase 3 looks like. That is a much colder setup for the United States, and also a much more wetter setup at that as well. Look at what phase 2 brings. It brings a lot of rain for Texas, a lot of rain for the southeast and into the northeast, as well as phase 3. It brings a lot of rain for Texas and a lot of rain for the southeast. But then it also brings a much more active Pacific jet for the Pacific Northwest, and that would imply the elevation of the Southern Oscillation Index. So, and this mechanism rotates around the Earth around the globe every about 45 to 60 days. Now, have you ever heard of weather cycling? Typically, some cycles, say, hey, if it rains at my house every Sunday, it rains at every Sunday. Typically, you have 7-day cycles. When the MJO rolls around, typically you have 7-week cycles, and that's where the recurring cycle theory comes from as well. Typically, what that basically signifies is a pattern repeats itself every 7 weeks on average. And so that's what we're kind of up against right now, as this MJO is going into much a more colder and a wetter, setup for the south and southeast, as well as the northeast, and along the northwest as well. So let me kind of take you through the temperature anomalies. Now, here is the latest Climate Prediction Center. This was forecasted on February the 28th. I mean, we're talking 7 days ago. This was their monthly forecast when the MJO was in phase 8. This is a much warmer temperature anomalies for the southeast and much of the country. But that's not continuing. Look what happens now. Look at the 8 to 14 days. This is a much more colder pattern. Now they're seeing, now they're actually seeing the SOI index. Now they're seeing the MJO going into phase 2 and phase 3. If they were seeing the SOI and the MJO phase 2 and phase 3, there's no way they would have made this prediction right here. This is not going to be accurate. So as these colder temperatures move into the United States, it's going to bring a much colder look, and that actually continues, I think, all the way through the end of March. Once we get basically the middle of the month, because this is the 8 to 14 days. And even right now, with these above average anomalies, I just checked the stats for Dallas-Fort Worth. We're averaging 3 degrees below average temperatures for the month of March, and we're 7 days in. So right now, we're still below average. And yeah, we might creep up a little bit above average for the next couple of days, but then we have much colder air coming in, by the 12th, 13th, and of course, by the middle of the month, and that'll continue through the rest of March. So I do feel we'll be below average for the month of March as well. Let's take a look at the anomalies. Here's the anomalies for the next 5 days from the 0 to 5. Yeah, right now we've got a much more, hotter time, warmer temperatures over the south and central part of the northeast. That's the phase 8 we're talking about. We've got the colder air trough penetrating going into the Pacific Northwest with these colder anomaly temperatures into the west. Take a look at what the next 5 days beyond that, from the 6 to 11 day. We're talking from the 13th through the 18th. We have a much colder look. The trough, the PNA goes negative. With the trough really starts to dig in, that polar jet starts to become a little bit more active from the north. That'll draw in some colder air. These troughs will draw in some colder air. And then now we're talking snow probably flying into Colorado as this gets into Texas with these much colder anomalies by then. And then a little bit warmer anomalies still hang on for the south and to the southeast. But that trend even fades even more as we go into the 10 to 15 days as these below normal anomalies really start to amplify 20 plus degrees below average temperatures. By then, we're talking the middle of the month, or by St. Patrick's Day and beyond, these much colder anomalies are over the United States. That'll signify the phase 2, the phase 3 of the MJO, and a much more colder and wetter setup for the south and southeast as these troughs really try to get its act together, traversing across, and then probably would lift up in a Miller type A setup and bring big snowstorms to the northeast. So let me kind of walk you through this here. Here's Tuesday, March the 9th. We see the Pacific Northwest has that trough start to dig in. That's when we see some of those snow starts to break out into Idaho, into Montana. That'll creep into Wyoming. And then like I said, the Pacific Northwest will try to start to get its act together and start bringing some more rain showers into Oregon, into Washington. That's on Tuesday. But as we go into Wednesday, that same system will continue moving across into Wyoming. That'll spread some snow out there, and then it'll start to creep into the Dakotas. As this banding, as the SOI starts creeping in towards that, that 10 to 14 day time frame, a much more active period, that rain starts to creep a little bit further south. So now it's kind of entering the coast. So now we're talking rain showers into, Los Angeles, San Diego areas, and bringing more snows for the mountain regions of California by then on Wednesday. And as we take you through Thursday, that same system really starts to dig down and bring some of your snows start to creep into Utah, getting into Nevada, as well as Colorado, with some heavier snows as colder air kind of starts to funnel into the picture by then, as we have a much warmer air out ahead of it. So these temperature gradients are going to be extreme. This is Thursday, March the 11th. Remember the SOI, right? We're talking a 14-day lag. That'll put it around the 11th and 12th time frame from the February 25th. So now we've got well above average temperatures for Texas. We're talking almost 80 degrees in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Much of South Texas almost pushing 90 for the Rio Grande Valley. But looking out ahead of it into Wyoming, into Colorado, where the snow flies, we won't even get above freezing by the time we get into Thursday, and portions of Colorado as heavier snows start to really fall into that area. And that will only continue as it moves across. By Friday, that snow really starts to take shape over Arizona, getting into portions of New Mexico. Heavier snows bringing more snow into Colorado. But out ahead of it, now we're going to start taking the shape of that cold air mixing with that temperature gradient. We're probably going to be talking severe weather by Friday afternoon, as that clash in temperatures really sets up shop around Wichita Falls into Oklahoma area, getting into portions of Kansas. If you look at the latest 700 millibar wind velocity, yeah, we have a lot of updrafts coming in by Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So we're talking possibly severe weather on the table of high winds, damaging hail, some isolated tornadoes is not out of the question. And this area along the northeast northern corridor, panhandle of Texas, getting to Wichita Falls, we're talking possibly Oklahoma into Kansas. And even the latest, guidance, the analog guidance of the GFS model implies the same thing. This probably sets up a tad bit west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area with a severe weather setup, as well as into Oklahoma, getting into portions of Missouri, as that temperature gradient will be really extreme of about 40 degree swing from Texas into Colorado. And as this continues pushing across, you'll have that severe threat transfer into snow on the backside. And then as this moves across on Saturday, that severe threat only pushes a little bit further off to the east. And now the setup could be further into East Texas, into Oklahoma, into Kansas, definitely over Missouri by then, into portions of Arkansas, as that temperature gradient will be over that neck of the woods by then on Saturday. So you have to definitely be on the lookout for that. But yeah, on the backside, where that trough is really going to start to dig in, that trough alone will have colder air to it as well. But we're talking polar air reaching down to the surface as well, and polar air is shallow air. So, typically these models on a longer term basis can't grasp the true grasp of shallow air, and that's what we already kind of experienced back in that Arctic outbreak back in February, as the models weren't really truly getting the intensity of the cold. And I do feel it's not going to be that as extreme as February, obviously, but yeah, I don't think the models are seeing as much of the cold is going to be on the table than what they're showing at the moment. I do feel it's going to be even colder than that, what they're actually showing at the moment, because that snow is probably going to push further into Texas by then. We're talking probably Sunday, March the 14th time frame. And as this we kind of zoom into Texas, yeah, the latest European model has that snow flying all the way into portions of the Texas Panhandle, probably creeping down into West Texas by then. So yes, I definitely feel more snow is on the table for you guys in Texas coming up by next weekend. And I do feel that system will continue moving across as it brings in colder air. That'll traverse across into portions of Missouri, get into Iowa by then, getting into Illinois. And this will traverse across as that polar air creeps down from the north, right? As this continues moving across into the Ohio Valley, now get into the Northeast with a snowstorm possibly for you guys. Yeah, check out the Pacific Northwest with that active Pacific jet. That's going to start remaining active as well, with some more snow flying for you guys into the Pacific Northwest, into Washington, into Oregon, into Idaho, in the north and the Northeast as well. And then down below with that active SOI index, yeah, you're going to have rain showers and probably storms traverse across from west to east and portions of Alabama into Georgia, getting into portions of the Carolinas by then. And this will continue moving across on Monday, amplifying the cold, tapping into some of that polar air from the Northeast. That'll transfer to more snow for you guys in like New York, Jersey, Philly, New York City will have some more snow by then. I don't think Boston gets this one, but you got a bigger snowstorm on, back behind this one. But on the 15th, yeah, this will continue moving across into the Northeast, dumping some heavier snows for the Northeast. And as we go beyond that, now we're looking at about March 17th time frame. I meant to say St. Patrick's Day by then. By St. Patrick's Day, yeah, that SOI is really going to be active by then. The polar jet's really going to be a lot more active by then. We're going to have much more colder air to deal with, and these colder cores are going to be bringing down some probably frigid, if not Arctic air by then into the Ohio Valley, getting into the Northeast, and that'll amplify even portions of the Deep South. Will start to really feel those colder temperatures, and the Climate Prediction Center already hinted at that as well in the 8 to 14 day time frame with those well below average anomalies. But yeah, by the 19th, I really feel that we talking a major snowstorm for the Northeast is on the table, as this would be a much snowier setup with a lot of colder air in place, and we're probably talking heavy snow. If not, look at these isobars that really start to bind together, and could be even talking blizzard-like conditions at times for portions of the Northeast, as we have much colder air to work with by then over the United States. Look how active the time frame is over the next 15 days. Look at the Pacific jet. It really starts to amplify over Washington and Oregon, but with that southern oscillation really increasing, with that warmer temperatures trying to creep back into a little bit more of an ENSO pattern. Yeah, those rain showers and storms creep all the way down into California and bring some much needed rain to southern California by then. And with that SOI really start to get amplified, yeah, we could be talking some heavier rains and above average precipitation for a good chunk of the Southeast into the Northeast. But look at the snow. I mean, look at the snow that could fly over definitely Colorado. I just think Colorado gets nailed this month with a lot of heavy snow, and you'll be making up your deficit in a big way for Colorado. And that snow will start to creep into portions of Texas, get into West Texas. Even though it's not showing right now, I do feel this is going to be extending further south than what the actually is implying. I do feel snow is going to be over Oklahoma. I feel snow is going to be over Arkansas as well as Missouri. That'll creep into the Ohio Valley. And yeah, we're talking possibly a big snowstorm that's on the table for the Northeast, as we got plenty of winter left. And I do feel there's another one coming after this by the end of the month. So there's a lot of winter left that's going to be on the table as a much colder pattern really starts to take shape by the middle of the month. And I just feel like that continues all the way through the end of March. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.